I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Syria. Myths and realities about the conflict. Since we last filmed 2 weeks ago, you might think nothing's changed in Syria. The same headlines continue to recur. Assad is winning, or the Islamic State is winning, or both are winning, as insurgents are fragmented, depressed, ready to give up the battle after more than 3 years. You might think that, but if you had the chance to actually have a look at what is happening across Syria in many different places, you get a different picture. Consider what's happened in these last 2 weeks. Near Damascus, insurgents have just broken a major regime siege on a town called Malia, just east of the capital. This town, which was under attack for months, was considered a gateway to insurgent-held areas of the province of East Ghouta. The regime was going to take it and then wipe out insurgents who had surrounded Damascus for months. But in fact, the exact opposite has happened. The insurgents have withstood the attacks and now have basically hit back. Indeed, 2 weeks ago, insurgents actually extended attacks inside the capital, in Damascus, striking at Al Abasin Square in the northeast of Damascus. Okay, if not Damascus, let's take a look at Aleppo. You know, the place where the regime supposedly was going to turn out insurgents, finally defeat them after more than 2 years of a divided city. Well, this past weekend, in the western part of the city, it was not the regime but the insurgents who were triumphant, occupying a military research center and causing heavy regime casualties. Or, if not Damascus and Aleppo, let's try Hama, Syria's fourth largest city. Insurgents not only advanced in the last 2 weeks in that area, they have moved within a few kilometers of the military airport, one of the most important for the regime in Syria, because it is used not only to fly raids, including barrel bombs which are made at the facility, it's used as a transport hub to move regime troops to the north and south of Syria. Or how about the southwest, where, as we reported for months, insurgents continue to take territory between the Lebanese border and Daraa, the birthplace of the revolution in the south of Syria. Or how about in the northwest, in Idlib province, where insurgents have not only taken additional territory, they are on the verge of isolating the regime's 2 remaining bases in the northwest of the country. That doesn't sound like a victory for the regime. And indeed, last week, if you paid very careful attention to President Assad, you might notice that there was a tinge of worry in his voice. As he celebrated Army Day, the president told troops that they must continue to stand for Syria. They must continue to be strong. They must not give up the fight. These were not the words of a man who was on the verge of proclaiming mission accomplished and that all the soldiers could go home. So why, given the reality of what's happening on the ground, do we continue to get the myth? Well, consider one story in the Washington Post 2 weeks ago. One of their top reporters went to try to investigate what was happening in Syria, but she did it by carrying out interviews with displaced persons in Turkey because it wasn't safe to go farther. When she talked to these people in Turkey, for understandable reasons, having been in refugee camps for months, years, they were dispirited, depressed. There were fighters who asked whether it had all been worth it. There were former defecting soldiers who said perhaps Assad would not be defeated, like they thought in 2011 and 2012. Well, that seems quite natural to me. If I was stuck in a refugee camp, separated from family, having watched the conflict go on and on and on, I might think that I was not going to win either. But inside Syria, you might get a different perspective if you were able to interview there. Look, this isn't to say that the insurgents are winning. We've said for months, and I'll repeat now, this is a patchwork war. You go to one part of Syria and you can claim regime success. You go to another part of Syria and you can say that the jihadist Islamic State are winning. You go to another part and you can say that the insurgents are advancing. A patchwork war means that you can take sides or you can be realistic. You can say that this is an ongoing conflict with no clear winner and that there's not likely to be one for many, many months, perhaps even years to come. I'm Scott Lucas, and this is today's EA Worldview on Syria.